The following is a summary of the Sicha of Shabbos Parshas Acharei Kedoshim Tov Shin Nun. On this Shabbos, we read three parshias. Acharei and Kedoshim are together, and Shabbos by Mincha, we start reading the parsha of Emor. Everything is Bahashgacha Pratis, especially sedras that we read b'tzibur, and certainly in each one of them there is a nekuda mushutefes, a point which links all the three sedras, and yesh bazeh mash'ein bazeh. There is something in each one which adds to the other. All of these sedras speak about the concept of kedusha, kedushas Hashem, the holiness of Hashem's name, and Kedushas Yisrael, the holiness of the Jewish people. In the Parsha of Acharei, the Parsha starts off by telling us about the passing of the two sons of Acharei. And the Torah tells us, Bikroivai Kodesh. With their passing, there was a sanctification of Hashem's name, V'nikdash Bichvoidi. Further, the Torah tells us of the entry of the Kohen Gadol into the Kedoshim, which itself was the highest moment of Kedusha. In the Parsha of Kedoshim, the Torah starts off, Kedoshim Tiyu, you should be holy. And just like I am holy, says Hashem, so too you should be holy. And if you make yourselves holy in the world, I consider it, says Hashem, as if you have sanctified me. Then later in the Parsha of Emor, we have the Pasuk V'nikdashti b'soich b'nei Yisrael, which is the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, of sanctifying Hashem's name. Emor is an expression of praise and importance. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to the Jewish people, you have made me something in the world, and I will make you something in the world. In other words, Yidden bring praise to Hashem through making a Kiddush Hashem. So let's go back now and have a look at this concept of Kedusha, which links all the three parshias, and see the addition of each one and how it complements the other. Starting with the Parsha of Acharei. In the opening of Acharei, there is an immediate question in the first pasuk. It says, Acharei Moish shnei b'nei Aaron, b'karvosam lifnei Hashem, vayomusu. After the passing of the two sons of Aaron, as they drew near to Hashem, and they died. Why does the Torah repeat and say vayomusu, and they died? It says already, Acharei Mois shnei b'nei Aaron, after the passing of the two sons of Aaron. Why repeat again that they passed away? And also, surely the pasuk could have been said in a much shorter way by just saying Acharei Mois shnei b'nei Aaron. Why does it need to say the second part of the pasuk, b'karvosam lifnei Hashem vayomusu, that the reason they passed away was because they drew near to Hashem? We'll understand this by analyzing the death of the two sons of Aaron. In its simple understanding of the pasuk, it seems to be a punishment for a sin. However, we know that Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aaron, were on an extremely lofty level, as it says, Bikroivai Kodesh, that I was sanctified with those that are near me. And as Rashi explains, that they were Gedolim mimeni umimeka, that Moshe said to Aaron, that your sons were in fact greater than both me and you. And being on such a lofty level, how is it possible that they did a sin? And that which Moshe said, that they are greater than me and you, it wasn't just a hyperbole because of humility that he said that. Because the concept of an Onov, a humble person, is that they know their greatness, they know their advantages, and yet they are still humble. And that's why Moshe knew who he was, and that's why it was necessary to conduct oneself with him in a way of kavod, and to give him the correct kavod for his milas, for his advantages. And even if you want to say that Moshe did say this out of humility, but what about the kavod of Aaron, his brother? Therefore, we must in fact conclude that in truth, Nadav and Avihu were greater than Moshe and Aaron. And if that's the case, how is it possible that they actually did do something sinful? It is well known the explanation of the Oyer HaChaim HaKadosh, who says that the death of the two sons of Aaron came out of their devekus, their cleaving to Hashem. That brought them to a misas neshikin, a death through the kiss and proximity to the divine. That's why it says, B'karvosam lifnei Hashem. It was their drawing close to Hashem that caused the ecstatic death, which they experience of the exiting of their soul from their body, out of spiritual ecstasy in wanting to become close to Hashem. The chait, the sin, which the word chait is the idea of chisorin, something lacking, that wasn't because of their proximity to Hashem. That's a good thing. However, what the chait was, is that it actually brought to their physical death. In other words, they allowed their devekus, their cleaving to Hashem, to come to klois hanefesh b'poel mamish, to the exiting of their soul. In other words, in the lexicon of Chassidus, there was a rotzoi without a shuv. There was a desire to cleave, but that wasn't later translated into a return. As it says, Al korcha chai, against your will you live, and there is the desire of Hashem to create a dira b'tachtonim, a dwelling place here in this world. So their death, therefore, it was a kiddush Hashem. It was rather like bringing a korban to Hashem, that they offered themselves to Hashem. So there was a greatness and a sanctification of Hashem's name in their demonstration of their desire to cleave to Hashem. And yet, it was also a chait in the sense that they didn't return. This, therefore, was the first time in the Torah that we have the concept of mesiras nefesh al kiddush Hashem, of giving up one's life to sanctify Hashem's name. In fact, it was an avodah chadasha, a new type of service. It was an eish zora, as the Torah describes it, that they brought a strange fire. However, that can be translated lemalusa, to their advantage. In other words, this was a novel demonstration of Nadav and Avihu, that even though they'd never been commanded to do this, nevertheless, this avodah is higher than any command. It shows a level of devotion and proximity which wasn't even commanded, but it was experienced by them in a way of mesiras nefesh. And this actually empowered all future generations, that Jews would be able to have mesiras nefesh, however, neshames begufim, souls in bodies. And so now we understand the flow of the Pesukim. It says, after they're drawing near, then it tells us of the entry of Aaron into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that although there has to be the entry of the Kohen on the holiest day in the year, nevertheless it must be a way of rotzoi, of a cleaving of the soul, together with a shuv, with a return and his exit from the Kedosh HaKadoshim alive. And that is hinted to in the name of the Sedra, Acharei. Acharei means after, and as a continuation and a result of the avodah of the sons of Aaron. They were the ones that opened the path of entering into the holy the inner sanctum. However, a return neshama beguf, soul in body. Now we'll understand the flow of the Sedras. First Acharei and then Kedoshim. After the avodah of the Bnei Aaron, then Yidden have Kedoshim, have the power to sanctify themselves in a way of Kikodesh Ani, of reflecting Hashem's sanctity. And through that, they make a Kiddush Hashem in the world, and that's why we have the Parsha of Emor, the mitzvah of Anikdashti, the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. And this is the Nukuda, the point which joins the three Sedras, that a Jew, soul in body, needs to sanctify themselves and thereby make a Kiddush Hashem. And it's a general command, which was why it was actually said to the Jews at a moment of Hakel, of gathering them all together. What we still need to understand is what is the specific addition of each one of the Sedras and their mention of Kiddush Hashem over the other. The explanation is that Kedoshim Tiyu V'Nikdashti, the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, is a mitzvah in all situations and to all Jews. However, it can actually be divided into three. The first is a Kiddush Hashem within the realm of holiness, doing a mitzvah with Mesidus Nefesh. The second is a Kiddush Hashem which is made by Yidden, by sanctifying the world, and in fact separating themselves, Purushim Tihiyu, from the negativities of the world. The third is Kaddish Atzmecha B'Mutalach, sanctifying the permitted, doing things L'Shem Shamayim. We'll be able to understand these three better by analyzing the Mishnah in this week's Pirkei Avos in Perek Gimel. The Mishnah says, Akavia ben Mahalal al-Omer, Histakel b'shlosh dvarim, look at three things, ve'ein atabali de avera, and you won't come to do an avera. Dameyayin bosa, know from where you came, ula'on atahoylech, to where you are going, ve'lifnei mi ata'asa litin devecheshben, and before whom you're going to give an account. May ayin bosa, where did you come from? Mitipas rucha, from a putrid drop. Ula'on atahoylech, where you are going. L'makom afarima b'seilea, to a place of dust and worms. V'lifnei mi ata'asa litin din v'cheshem lifnei melech malchei melachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, before whom are you going to give a account? Before the King of Kings. Now, we need to understand a few things in this Mishnah. Number one, the Seder of Avodah is Sur Mira v'asei tov, turn away from evil and then do good. Rather like a vessel, before you fill it with food and drink, it needs cleaning. Once it's clean, then you can bring in the food. So the Mishnah Histakel b'shlosh dvarim, so that a person shouldn't come to an Avera, seems to be a concept of a Sur Mira. That should have been stated before the other items in the Mishnah and in Pirkei Avos, which are Asei Tov, which are doing good. Furthermore, the Mishnah, the setup of the Mishnah, is rather strange. First of all, it says, Histakel b'shlosh dvarim, look at three things. Then it says, what are the three things? Me'ayin basa, etc. And then, in the third part of the Mishnah, it asks the question, where did you come from? And gives an answer. So, the Mishnah is sort of set up in three stanzas. The instruction, what you're looking at, the three things, and then what the three things are. Why didn't the Mishnah say, Bekitzer, Histako me'ayin basa mitipus rucha, look where you came from, a pewter drop, where you're going to a place of dust, before whom you're going to give the din v'cheshbon, and then you won't do an avera. Why did the Mishnah stagger it in 3 stanzas? The answer is that in fact, the Mishnah is an instruction to all Yidden. However, Yidden as they are arrayed in 3 groups, in Tzadikim, the righteous, Beinanim, the intermediaries, and Rishoyim, and the wicked, as it's arrayed actually parallel to the 3 wills of Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya. And as it's arrayed in the 3 types of Avodah, Avodah number 1, in Inyone Kedusha, in matters of holiness, where the neshama shines. Number 2, in matters of permission, the avodah with the body, where the body has and is swayed to this way and to that way. And thirdly, in a situation where the bad in the world is misgaber, overrides and overcomes the good. And the instruction of the Mishnah is in all these 3 situations. In other words, the mitzvah of the nikdashti, of Mesiras Nefesh, is to each group, if you want, in itself. So let's start with the first group, the level of the tzaddik, the world of Bria, which it says is the majority good. That's the world where the neshama shines in a revealed way, and a person's main and principal avodah is in the realm of kedusha, of holiness. So there a person doesn't have any connection openly with anything that's bad. So when we say ve'einat aboli de avera, the word avera used in connection with the tzaddik is the idea of havara mirshus l'rshus, the transfer from one domain to the next domain. In other words, we're saying to the tzaddik that the tzaddik shouldn't come to transfer it from the higher domain of kedusha to a lower domain of kedusha, and that can possibly happen through taivas heta, through desiring the permissible. And the reason why their soul came down to this world is so that they should have bechira chavshes, free choice. And the instruction of the Mishnah on the level of the tzaddik is that the tzaddik should just be histakel b'shloisha devarim. They need to look at 3 things. And for the tzaddik, you don't need to detail what the 3 things are. The tzaddik just needs to know there are 3 things. There's themselves, which is a chelek elokami mal mamish, a soul. There is the world, and there is Hashem. And through looking at those 3 things, the tzaddik understands that they need to be connected with Hashem, and they shouldn't transfer domains from the higher level of holiness to a lower level of holiness, kadosh atzmecha b'mutalach, sanctifying themselves with everything which is permissible. That's the first instruction of the Mishnah. The second part of the Mishnah is directed to the Beinani, to the world of Yitzira, which is half good and half bad. There you have the full strength of the Yetzer Hara, which feels the world as something independent, but nevertheless, the Beinani prevails over it. And even when there enters into the mind of the Beinani a extraneous thought, the Beinani pushes it away. And the reason of the descent of the soul of the Beinani is to experience iskafia, the suppression. For that level, it's not good enough to say histakel b'shloisha devarim, but for that level, where there is an existence outside of godliness, outside of the realm of holiness, it's necessary to detail the hispoinanus, the meditation, to give the Beinani details with which they can integrate and cause themselves and have an effect on themselves that they won't come to do an avera. And then you have the third stanza in the Mishnah that is addressed to the world of Asiya, the world of Klipos, and in a place where the Rishoyim prevail. On that level, the idea is the concept of ishapcha, the transformation of darkness to light and of bitterness into sweet, breaking the Klipos. And therefore, Now we understand why the Mishnah wasn't said previously, because it actually addresses all three levels of tzaddikim, beinanim, and rishoim. And the understanding of that Mishnah and its setup actually helps us understand the three sedras of Acharei, Mois, Kedoshim, and Emor, and how they reflect the idea of Kedusha. The parsha of Acharei refers to the tzaddikim, Bikroivai Ekodesh, Nadav and Avihu, who were great people, the greater than even Moshe and Aaron. The Seder of Kedoshim talks to the Beinani, who is in the world, but nevertheless, Kedoshim Tiyu, is separated from the distractions of the world. And then you have the mitzvah of Nikdashti in the parsha of Emor, which is talking to Yidden in every situation, even when they're in the world, affected by the world, but nevertheless they still have the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. And all this is connected with the days of the Sfira, in which we make the tefillah ule tahareinu ule kadshenu b'kedushascha ho'elyena, which gives the koyach and the empowerment of the avodah of Kedoshim Tiyu. And every day we add in tahara and in kedusha, because every day we have the accomplishments of the previous days. And all this is in the month of Iyar, which has the two Rosh Tevis, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Rachel, and Ani Hashem Reifecha. The Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, were themselves a Merkava, a chariot to Hashem. They themselves were Kedoshim Umuvdalim, were holy and separated from this world, as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya in chapter 23. Nevertheless, there is the fourth level in Iyar, which is Rachel, which the idea of Rachel is the Imohis who bring it down to this world, a neshama, and the ecstasy of the neshama, but as it's anchored in Dira B'Tachtonim, as it's anchored down here in the world. And Ani Hashem Reifecha, the matzav of Yidden down here is that they are possibly entertained choli, sickness, but nevertheless, Ani Hashem Reifecha, Hashem will be our healer, not putting the sickness on us to begin with, because Gufa Dilahoin Kadisha, because we sanctify our bodies. And especially as it was in that year, that in Tafshin Nun, that the Shabbos was on Yud Iyar and Hoasidi Yeh Kodesh. All this is a preparation to Lag BaOmer, because the Rashbi and his Avodah was one of Kiruv, proximity and closeness to Hashem, and yet soul in body. He himself was complete bittul. He said, Anar Simona Ba'alma, I'm just a reflection of Hashem. And he was the one that took away the divides, the mechitzos, the gal, which was between Nigla of Torah and Pnimis HaTorah, the higher worlds and the lower worlds, and there was revealed Kedusha, holiness, in all the worlds. And from the Rashbi, we get the empowerment of infusion of Kedusha in all worlds. And that, of course, expresses itself in the Minhag Yisrael, in the custom to rejoice in the Simcha of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai through making farbrengens and gatherings and parades, Barov Am Hadras Melech, with an emphasis on Sheves Achim Gam Yachad, on Avos Yisrael and Achdus Yisrael, and a special emphasis on children. So the Horah of this Shabbos is clear, and that is the Kiddush Shem Shamayim, the sanctification of making a Kiddush Hashem, especially in connection with Lag BaOmer. And therefore there needs to be a great preparation for Lag BaOmer, a preparation for the farbrengens, a preparation for the parades, children marching with banners, which all adds to the excitement and the warmth of Yiddishkeit and leaves an indelible impression on the children for years to come. And especially in the year Tafshin Nun, which is the idea of Shnas Nisim, Orim Nisi, it should be greater than in fact all previous years, a tremendous Kiddush Hashem with great Achdus. And through all the above, that will lead to the greatest Kiddush Hashem, which is the Geula Amitis V'Hashlema, And that should all be lekavoid hashchina l'shem shamayim, because now the Shechina is in Golus, and what we want to do is extract the Shechina from Golus and have the greatest Kiddush Hashem, especially now that Kolu Kol HaKitzin, all the end times have passed, and there should be the V'nikla Kavod Hashem, the revelation of the true glory of our Hashem, B'teikef umiyad mamish, immediately now.